Monday morning, we have a very, very special guest in our studio. Right after the Mamdani victory this past Tuesday, Rabbi David Stav, who leads the Tzohar rabbinical organization in Israel and is the chief rabbi of Shoham in Israel, encouraged more of a widespread commitment to Aliyah. The official announcement read, after the election results positioned Mamdani to become the mayor of New York City, the Tzohar rabbinical organization issued an open letter to the diaspora Jewish community calling for individuals and community leaders to prioritize the option of living in Israel on the community and family agenda. Rabbi David Stav, a pleasure to welcome you to JM in the AM.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Shalom, shalom. So why now? Especially someone like yourself, you always like to emphasize that if one who lives in the diaspora wants to move to Israel, they should do so for positive reasons, for love of the homeland, etc. So why tie this statement so directly into what happened last week in New York?
Well, first of all, that was only one part of the announcement. Actually, we embraced the American community, the Jewish community in New York and in other places in the States, and we understand that if people will decide to stay in the States because of several reasons, and we mentioned this in our announcement, we know that people could stay because of family reasons, because of other reasons, but
there's always a good reason to stay.
There's always a good reason to stay, but it's a time to consider again the future of the Jewish people, and we don't have to wait until it will be too late, but we see the signs already that America is not as it used to be, or at least it's not as we wanted it to be. And if we do not come for the good reasons, for the positive reasons, we should understand that we should come maybe even for the negative reasons. And I want to add one more thing to that. Although we are now it was the Parashat Chayei Sarah, but in a few weeks we will learn the portion of Vayetze. And it's an amazing quote, an amazing idea that the Sfat Emet says. Yaakov calls his two wives and he tells them, well, the face of your father Lavan is not the same as it used to be in the past. And I heard you brothers complaining that I stole money from your father, etc., etc. And Hashem and God told me to go back to the land of Israel. So the Sfat Emet asks, if you have a command of God to go back to Eretz Israel, why do you have to add the reasons of Lavan's face is not the same and the brothers speak bad about you, etc., etc.?
A commandment's a commandment.
A commandment is a commandment. So the Sfat Emet gives an amazing answer. And he says, how did Hashem talk to Yaakov and he told him to go back to Eretz Israel? He sent him the signs by the face of Lavan. He sent him the signs by the words that the sons of Lavan were saying. We see the signs. The signs means that Hashem is talking to us. Hashem is telling us, Jews, dear Jews, please understand what is the direction. The direction is to the land of Israel. It doesn't mean that in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel, it's more secure than in America. I'm not saying that. I know that we are past
challenging times
in Israel as well.
Right.
But we understand at least that over there, it's ours. Over there, we know that we have the chance to rebuild the Jewish society again, and not only thinking about redemption, but moving it forward and making redemption by ourselves.
Move that mic a drop away. And on top of that, in Israel, their priority is the safety of the Jewish people. And here, or anywhere in the diaspora, you wonder about the future of the safety of the Jewish people and the future of people in general. It's there is the potential, and Kristallnacht, we just commemorated it yesterday. I'm not saying anything is turning into Kristallnacht in New York. I'm not going to that degree, obviously. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen, and the safety of the public, and in our case, the safety of the Jewish community, is priority one.
My father, bless his memory, used always to tell me that he asked the Bezer Rebbe, how come Jabotinsky was running around from shul to shul in Poland, yelling to the Jews, please leave Poland and leave Poland, whether you go to America or you go to Palestine, but leave Poland. And you, the Bezer Rebbe, you told us not to leave Poland. And the Bezer Rebbe answered him, we were blind. Our eyes were shut off by Hashem, by God. We didn't open our eyes. We don't want to repeat that mistake again. So we all are aware of what's going on. We see the incidents of anti-Semitism. We see the being elected of Mamdani. It doesn't mean that he's going to kill Jews tomorrow. No, I don't think so. But these are signs of normalization of anti-Semitism. Right. And if if it looks like a dog and it speaks like a dog and it walks like a dog, most probably it's a dog.
Right. Did they ever give Jabotinsky credit for having his eyes open, or it's just that the Bezer Rebbe had his eyes closed?
I dare to say that they did not give the credit.
They don't give him the credit.
Jabotinsky. But, I'm not here to criticize not this and not there. I'm just saying.
Understood. And you're very into unity and concentrating on what unites us instead of divides us. So.
Yes. I'm just using this as a metaphor of having blind eyes.
But
the rabbis usually are called in the Torah Einei Ha'edah. There are
Chachamim Einav Barosho, right?
Chachamim Einav Barosho, and the Torah defines rabbis as Einei Ha'edah. Right. These are the eyes of the people. Sometimes the eyes are closed, so we have to try to open them.
Rabbi David Stav is here. You sound very familiar with the Galut. Are you a native Israeli? Were you born in Israel?
Of course I was born in Israel.
No, I say it like that because your English is spectacular, and it sounds like you're very familiar with what's going on in the diaspora. Is that just because over the years you've become familiar with what's happening here?
First of all, we have deep connections with a lot of rabbis, with a lot of communities. Personally, I learned in Israel for 1 year in Baltimore in 1974. Wow. My Rebbe was the Rav Kamal Weinreb. Bless his memory, he passed away 2 years or 3 years ago, and I remember him with a lot of respect and admiration. And through the times with the connections of Tzohar with many, many Americans, with many, many American communities, are very deep and strong. Actually, we are now working on creating we having already a TV internet channel in Hebrew and want to expand it to English. We have a weekly paper that is distributed in shuls in Israel in Hebrew, and we consider to translate it to English.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Wow.
We want to engage more and more Israeli Jews to American Jews, and we believe that we belong to the same nation and to the same future.
Rabbi David Stav is here. Why did you spend the year in Baltimore? How did that materialize?
My father, that was a Bezer Chassid, said that a scholar has to know English. And he said, you have to know to talk to people, you have to read literature that is written only in English, and if you want to be something, you have to learn English. So he sent me in 1974. You could imagine
without the family going.
Without
you went
the family,
yourself.
I went myself. I lived in Borough Park on Shabbatot, when I had free Shabbatot, and I used to go once in 2 or 3 weeks back to Borough Park, and spent 3 weeks in Israel.
So you're very friendly, very familiar with Yeshiva Lane, if that's what they called it back then. I don't know if that was the name back then, but anyway. So what is the plan? Here's my traditional criticism of American rabbis, and I don't know how because I
don't make me problems with
no, God forbid. But I always feel that one of the main messages of any responsible American rabbi, especially the Orthodox ones who have a tremendous feeling of being tied to Israel and they feel that our future is tied to Israel, have to be speaking about the national message more than they do. I'll give you an example. This is an extreme example, but I do this every year. On Erev Shabbat HaGadol, I always use this microphone to remind the rabbis who are listening that there's no need to discuss the shear of Marar or how much charosis they should be using at the Seder or whatever else sometimes they like to speak about Shabbat HaGadol. It's the month of Nisan. This is the national holiday. This is the holiday that commemorates Yetziat Mitzrayim, to Matan Torah, to Knesset, to Eretz Yisrael. That's what the message should be. That's what, on an occasion like that, on the Shabbos HaGadol Drasha, that's what we should be concentrating on, the large picture future of the Jewish people. Do you understand what I'm saying?
First of all, I understand. I will add to you one short Torah regarding Shabbat HaGadol. It's an amazing, there is a seif, one in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Taf Lamed, I think. It says, Shabbat שלפני Pesach, the Shabbos before Pesach, קוראים אותו Shabbat HaGadol.
Right.
That's what Rabbi Yosef Karo says. And the question is, what is that? I mean, why is that important to say specific siman that you dedicate for that Shabbat? And he doesn't say there that you have to teach halachot. We call him Shabbat HaGadol because of the big miracle that occurred in Shabbat HaGadol. I always asked, in the drush of Shabbat HaGadol, I always ask, why is it important that the Shulchan Aruch will teach us the name of this Shabbos is Shabbat HaGadol? Had we forgotten that the name is Shabbat HaGadol? We know it's Shabbos before Pesach. We know that we have to prepare ourselves to Pesach. There is something which is very, very important to know in Shabbat HaGadol. The rabbis tell us that there was a big miracle in Shabbat HaGadol. What is the big miracle? Moshe commanded the Jews to prepare the sheep for the sacrifice of Pesach, and the Jews were not afraid, and they were preparing 4 days before Pesach. They were preparing the sheep, and each one of them bounded it to the door or to the house. And when the Egyptians went by and asked, what is that? And they said to them, well, we have a sacrifice in 4 days. And they were not afraid from the Egyptians, despite the fact that the sheep were the idols. So the question is that a big miracle? I mean, we had the 10 plagues. We had Kriyat Yamsuf. Okay, so the Jews were not afraid. And the answer is very simple. All the 10 plagues, all the things that God was doing, Hashem was doing, for Hashem there is no difference between natural things and miraculous things. Because for Hashem, He created the world. Who cares? For Him, it doesn't mean anything. For us, it's a miracle that Hashem made the plague of blood or whatever. The biggest miracle is that we have the courage to understand that we are not any more slaves, that we have the freedom to choose to leave Egypt. We have the freedom to choose to worship Hashem. We have the freedom to choose to take responsibility on our lives. That's Shabbat HaGadol. Shabbat HaGadol is the Shabbos that we declare to ourselves we have the courage to take our own decisions without being terrified, without being afraid.
No more galut mentality.
Exactly. And that's what Shabbat HaGadol symbolizes. Yet I want to justify the rabbis, my colleagues,
on the Shir of Maror?
Of the Shir of Maror and Charoset and Matzah, because every year people could forget, and we have to remind them that we don't have to die on the night of Seder, not to eat too much together. My father used to say, eating too much together is achila gasa. It's not considered as achila. We have to eat properly. We have to eat without talking, but we have to eat the shir. So the rabbis have to remind that. But we should never forget what is all Pesach about. It's about our own decision, our miraculous behavior, not to be afraid. And you know what? If we summarize the 2 years after October 7th, I think what's more surprising and more inspiring than anything is to see the youngsters that we the parents disgraced them. We undermined them. We doubted them. We were not sure will they be able to.
And this is the generation that you taught and that you helped raise.
Correct. And we were doubtful about their
commitment
and obligation to carry
and heroism.
To carry the torch. And when we see the letters, the number of books that will describe the stories of the October 7th war are already tripled all the wars that occurred in Israel. Because every week we see another story, another book, another description of soldiers writing texts to their parents, etc., etc. By the way, when you see so many stories about heroic behavior of the individuals, that means that something in the leadership was wrong, because when the leadership functions properly, there is no need for individuals' heroism. The need of so many heroic behaviors comes from the fact that the system does not function properly.
Wow. Rabbi David Stav is here, leader of Tzohar. We were talking about Aliyah, etc. What were your thoughts when you heard about the return of Hadar Goldin? What did you think of?
I'm now just writing, in the middle of writing an article about that. I could not disconnect it from this week's portion. The first time in our Tanakh, in our Bible, when there is a burial described is this week. And Avraham is urging to buy a piece of land to bury his beloved wife. And in this week, we will bring back the bones of Hadar Goldin to a Jewish burial. And there's a wonderful explanation. Rav Hoffman explains why does the Torah emphasize give so many verses to describe the burial of Sarai Menu. So there are a lot of explanations to that. And he doesn't accept the idea that the Torah wanted us only to understand that Abraham was buying every piece of land, despite the fact that it was promised by God to do that. Because he says, if that's the case, so why doesn't the Torah describe about any other purchase that Abraham was doing? Why does the Torah emphasize only the burial? Mm-hmm. And he gives an amazing answer. He says that the fact that the Torah described the burial of Sarah Menu teaches us that one of the ways we will be connected to the land of Israel is by looking up to our ancestors, knowing that they are buried there. Because we understand that when somebody passes away, it does not just disappear. It does not vanish. It's present by us. And when we will bring Hadar tomorrow to burial, we understand that his way of life, his values are with us. We bury maybe the bones, but his spirit will be present. And when we see the determination of his parents to fight, to struggle for 11 years to bring him home, we see this as a part of the eternal struggle of the Jewish people to come back to Israel and not to give away no Jewish soul, no Jewish body. We all belong to the land of Israel. And for me, it's something very inspirational.
Rabbi David Stav is here. I want to go back for a moment because when we talk about Mamdani and we talk about the Aliyah push that you eloquently made available to the public in terms of your statement, etc., and it seems like your attitude, your approach is that there is room for everybody in Israel, but it's more than that. And I think this is the reason maybe that you started Tzohar, to show there's room for everybody in the Jewish people, that there's room for everybody to feel included, to make religious life and its process easier for people. Would that be accurate, that this outreach to others to show that we want to include you as opposed to sometimes a system that looks like it's trying to exclude people? Is that one of the reasons you formed the organization?
Yeah, we established Tzohar organization a few months after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, when we felt that the Israeli society is broken to fractions. And if we will not do something to bridge the gaps between the different tribes that the Israeli society is consisted of, we will find ourselves in a disaster. The idea of dividing the state to Judea and Israelite kingdoms, like in the ancient First Temple, the state of Tel Aviv versus the state of Jerusalem, is an idea that run in a lot of people's minds. And for us, it means a disaster. Because Ata Echad v'Shimcha Echad. You Hashem, you are one, and your name is one. U'mi ke'amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. And the Zohar points out that when is Hashem one in the land? When his people are behaving like one nation. And when we are splitted, it's just like believing that there are several idols. As a matter of fact, the Medrash says that God prefers us to be united and not that frum, rather than being frum, observing all the mitzvot and being splitted. Hashem says, I prefer you to worship idols and being united rather than being frum and being separate.
How did we lose that perspective?
I don't know. The Chafetz Chaim brings that medrash several times. The Chafetz Chaim, the big Chafetz Chaim, that who does not see himself in the Orthodox world as his Talmud follower. That's the idea that we received from him. I'm not talking about Rav Kook. Rav Kook belongs to another group. But the Chafetz Chaim, who is bigger to us than the Chafetz Chaim? The Chazon Ish that taught us Aleinu lekarvam be'avotot shel ahava. The Chazon Ish refused to define the secular people as atheists with all the ramifications that this definition requires. He says they are all defined as tinokot shenishbu. And to whom was he speaking? He was speaking to those who grew up in cheders, to those who came from Europe and grew up in a religious environment. What can we say today when you see this? You know, the hostages, they come back and they tell you those kids that come from nowhere, came from no religious background.
Who spent Yontif at a dance festival.
Exactly. And they were ready to sacrifice their lives.
And fasted additional days for Yom Kippur.
Refused to eat pita on Pesach, refused to violate Shabbat. These are guys that came from non-observant background. They didn't learn anything about Judaism. So how could we judge these people as people that are atheists or that have no place? I believe that every Jewish man and woman could come to the land of Israel. Doesn't matter to which denomination he belongs to. Doesn't matter to what background he has. Israel is so big. It's so big in its heart. The Jewish people has such a big heart that is able to contain all complexities and all diversities. And B'ezrat Hashem will figure it out.
Practically speaking, because Tzohar at the beginning, I know, was dealing with Jewish weddings, right? Marriage certificates, etc. And there was a kashrut angle to it as well. Are those categories still active?
Yeah, but by the way, we help a lot of Americans just for knowledge.
I would imagine, yeah.
Yeah, many Americans that arrive to Israel come from non-observant background. Many of them find it very difficult to prove that they're Jewish when they start dating with an Israeli boy or girl, and all of a sudden they discover that they have to prove that they're Jewish. So if they get married through an Orthodox rabbi, usually the rabbinate will accept the letter.
Especially if they're familiar with the rabbi, yeah. If they're familiar with the rabbi.
If they know who he is.
Right.
But if they're not familiar with the rabbi, or if they come from a non-religious observant or other denominations, that could be a problem. And we are cooperating with Nefesh B'Nefesh. We help whoever who needs assistance to prove that he is Jewish. And actually, every immigrant has to prove that he is Jewish. It could be easily assisted by us, and we help them to prove their Jewish identity in order to enable them to get married through the rabbinate. Could tell you that every year we help more than 500 Americans that need our services.
Is that the biggest part of the Tzohar revolution, or? Because I know kashrut was also in there, right?
We have so many projects. I think we'll spend until more.
Well, I asked if it was the biggest.
The biggest project is the marriages, still.
Right.
And the TV internet channel. These are the two biggest projects. We have kashrut that requires a lot of effort. Baruch Hashem, we have almost 400 restaurants. Actually, when I came here to New York a few days ago, I met several people that told me, well, I want to thank you, Rav Stav, because of you, I could eat in more places in Tel Aviv. And I accepted the gratitude.
Yeah, their children may not, but they can. And I'm saying that.
No, I think that children.
I hope so. I hope you're right.
I think that children think that as well. I could say that whoever.
Because it seems that when the children from here go to the yeshivot and seminaries, one of the things one of the practices is to make sure that the students know where not to eat. And I wonder if that's always the best practice, but that's just a personal.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I'm sure you do.
I think I wrote an article that will be published this week or next week in America about advising the parents to which yeshivas to go and to which yeshivas to send them or not to send them.
Wow.
You know, modern Orthodox people would love to see their children following their ways.
Right.
Sometimes they're not aware of that, not knowing, they send their children to non-Zionist yeshivot, to Haredi yeshivot that did not hide the fact that they are not Zionist, but were not volunteering to share it with the parents. And the parents sometimes think that they sent to a pro-Israeli yeshiva and pro-Zionist yeshiva, and they find out a few months later that, they send them to a Haredi yeshiva. So I'm telling every parent, please check before you send your child.
They're not all yeshiva dakot, though.
Oh, no, not every yeshiva is Yeshivat HaKotel, not every yeshiva is Yeshivat HaRitzion. Without being advertising yeshivot, there are many good yeshivot. Yeah. By the way, could be many Haredi yeshivot that are good as well. But if you belong to that way of thinking, kol hakavod, bevakasha. Yeah. But if you want your children to continue your way and you belong to the modern Orthodox, please make sure that it's a modern Orthodox yeshiva.
And just back to our original topic, the Aliyah and the changes here in this part of the diaspora, etc. And I'm sure, by the way, I don't know if you travel to, other parts of the world. In Europe, this message is even much, much stronger. But in Europe, I think things are so bad that they don't need as strong of a message because people understand that they have to get to Israel as soon as possible. And by the way, like the French Aliyah, do you have to deal with that as well, with those of questionable background?
Personally, because of the problem of language, right. I don't deal with the French Aliyah, but we get a lot of Olim from France. Not as many as we could expect because of the wave of anti-Semitism. There are problems with the way they are received in Israel. Baruch Hashem, we're blessed with every immigrant, but many French immigrants want to think again whether the favorite place for them is Israel. I don't criticize them, just analyze.
No, understood.
We have a big group, not enough.
You must be happy that, because you mentioned Tel Aviv before, you must be happy that Tel Aviv seems to be getting more religious, more spiritual, or am I not as well informed as I think I am?
No, I think Tel Aviv is getting more and more Jewish. I don't know if it gets more religious, but it becomes more and more Jewish. There are so many shuls today full with youngsters, right. Many Americans. I guess to the American society, when I talk now, they are familiar with Ben Yehuda 126 and Ben Yehuda 86 right. And other minyanim. Baruch Hashem. Tel Aviv is flourishing, not only with American youngsters, but also with Israeli youngsters that are thirst to more and more Judaism. Are
you? Do you have any American Anglo community in Shoham, or is Shoham only an Israeli?
Unfortunately,
area?
We don't have a big American community. We have around 10-20 families that the background is American or Australian or South African.
So there is an Anglo presence.
Actually, it's not a big American presence. Small presence. Actually, we wanted to encourage, and I was supposed to arrive on behalf of Nefesh B'Nefesh to New York when they had a big presentation, but then exactly the COVID started and the event was cancelled. But I believe that in the future we would love to have more Americans in Shoham. I believe that Americans should discover a few other parts of Israel that they've not discovered yet. There are a few other communities besides Raqqa, Bet Shemesh, Mishkafayim, Yerushalayim, and Modi'in. And Ra'anana, there are a few other places, and Sham should be in the American.
I always joke I want to move to Katzrin, so who knows? You never know. There may be Americans up there at some point, although I think there are some already. All right, I have to let you go, but last couple of things. First of all, when it comes to the practical aspect of the Aliyah that you are encouraging, no reason for Tzohar to get involved in any of the system, right? Because your friends at Nefesh B'Nefesh have it all covered. Like there's really no way. I don't want to put words in your mouth. But as an observer, wouldn't you say there's really no way to improve on what they've gone ahead and established in Israel?
I think that Nefesh B'Nefesh is doing a great work, and I'm fully embracing them. We're, by the way, have now a joint project with them about different things in the army.
Wow.
So we encourage a lot what they're doing. What we are helping Nefesh B'Nefesh is to help those who need to prove Jewish identity, right. Those who want rabbis to perform the weddings, and many of the American rabbis are not yet approved. We help them to get through the system. By the way, just this morning met a rabbi that thanked me for allowing him to perform a wedding.
You advocated for him. Nice.
We allowed him. Yeah. We gave him the license because we are also official rabbinate, so we could authorize the American rabbis to perform weddings. So we do this every year for many, many couples. I think that there is a joke in Israel about Israelis that love Aliyah and don't like Olim.
That's for sure.
I would say that I want to believe that it's only a joke, and I could tell you that we at least we love Aliyah and we love Olim, and we will do any effort possible in order to enable them to integrate in the Israeli society wherever we can.
Wow. Finally, it's 2 years later. And you mentioned one of the great lessons of this war has been the incredible commitment of the next generation. They shined more than anybody expected them to shine through the most difficult of circumstances, the most harrowing of challenges. Big picture, not just the youth and not just the incredible IDF, etc., but big picture, what are some of the lessons that come out of this war? We look back at 2 years with the tremendous sacrifice and all the blood and pain that the Jewish people, especially obviously in Israel, have endured. What would you say the big takeaway is?
Wow. I think there are two major lessons. One major lesson is that we should never rely on what we believe that we see. Just like the Bezer Rebbe described his blinded eyes, we were all blind in October 6th.
We fooled ourselves.
We fooled ourselves in different levels, from bottom up. I never tried to explain why Hashem was doing it to us. I could only ask myself, what were we doing to ourselves? And to remind ourselves what happened to us in October 6th, how we were divided, how each tribe wanted to kill the other, how the prayers, including the Tzohar prayers in Yom Kippur, were violently interrupted physically and orally by protested, how people were ready to disobey, to not to join the army, how people were ready to pass the judicial reform despite all the resistance, despite the understanding that it's going to tear up the society to pieces. To remember that our external enemies will never be able to do what we could do to ourselves. We're experts in self-destruction, and this should be a lesson that I'm afraid that has not been taught yet, because when we see what occurs to us while we are talking, what happens today in the Israeli society is just a reminder to what happened to us in October 6th. That's one big lesson that we have to teach ourselves. And the second lesson is to open the eyes to the miracles of Hashem. I mean, Hashem was giving us such a punishment on October 7th, but this punishment was escorted with such love, with so many miracles. We were exposed to miracles that the prophets could never imagine. I mean, just to remind ourselves what happened to Syria, what happened to the Iran, what happened to the plans, the Hezbollah, with the beepers. Just to remember that if the Hezbollah would join the attack of Hamas in October 7, 6:29 early in the morning, we would not been sitting here talking about 2,000 victims. We would have been talking about 20,000, if not more than that. It was that close to that. Hashem saved us from these terrible thoughts and plans and schedules that they scheduled on us. And we should all remember that on one hand, miracles, we should never rely on miracles, and we have to remember what is our responsibility to our faults and to our behavior. On the other hand, to see how God is loving us, how God cares about us. And He cares about us. Sometimes it seems to be more than we care about ourselves.
I think, unfortunately, you're right. Wow. Rabbi David Stav, Tzohar will do anything in their power to help people move to Israel. That would be accurate, right? That would be a good way of saying it. And I agree with you on everything except for one thing. The only thing we're not going to agree on after this conversation is I think Shabbat HaGadol is only one topic. There's only one topic on Shabbat HaGadol. That's the incredible journey of the Jewish nation.
You can't expect two Jews to sit together for
and agree on everything.
30 minutes and to agree on everything. It will be above all expectations.
Harav Stav, Hadar Rabba.
Thank you.
Looking
so much.
forward to reuniting in Israel.
Bye.
More coming up. You're listening to a Monday morning edition of JM in the AM.